2024 has been a year of inconsistencies for the Mets. They've had ups, they've had downs, but the one thing that has been consistent is the bullpen struggling, particularly the guys not named Edwin Diaz or Daniel Nunez. This has been an obvious thing that the Mets need to address as they are right now in that wild card race, a game under 500, 2.5 games out of that third wild card. And if they're actually going to get into the postseason, actually get one of those wild cards, they're going to need some new bullpen additions. The New York Mets have taken the first step in accomplishing that goal by acquiring reliever from the Tampa Bay Rays, Phil Maton, in exchange for cash considerations. Now, in order to get Phil Maton on the 40-man roster for the New York Mets, they designated for assignment left-handed pitcher Joey Lucchesi. In this video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the New York Mets acquiring Phil Maton, what kind of impact he could have for the team, and just how I feel about the overall fit. If you like this video reacting to the latest Mets news, make sure to hit the like button out of the ballpark. Slide into the comment section. What are your thoughts on the Phil Maton trade? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What other relievers should the Mets be targeting? And also comment down below what other videos you want to see from me in the future. A lot of you guys might be like, Frank, where have you been? Did you disappear? Did you come back from the dead? What have you been up to? If you guys don't know, on the Mets Weekly channel, we do live shows twice a week. It's usually every Sunday and every Thursday. Basically, it's following every series from the New York Mets. So we're on there twice a week. Also, just about every day, I do recaps on the Mets Weekly TikTok. They're called the Mets Frankly Postgame, where I give my honest, instant reaction to the Mets. A lot of it is overreaction because it's heat of the moment. It's, right as soon as the game is over. So you may see some hot takes or some crazy, just passionate, like going crazy about stuff that ends up not being a factor in a couple of days. But that's just another way that you guys could just constantly get that content from me. So if there are things that you do want to see on this channel, the best way it helps me out is just let me know, what do you guys want to see? Reach out to me on Twitter, links in the description. What you guys want to see, I definitely will try to provide that for you. And if you want to make it all worth it, you could always subscribe. It is greatly appreciated. And to those of you who are subscribed already, you know the drill. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a stranger, tell a Ray, tell a fish, whoever. Any support I get, I always greatly appreciate it. So Phil Maton is a very interesting name because he's a guy that you should know. He shouldn't be like, oh my gosh, who's this no-name reliever? Because that's been the thing that's been kind of frustrating with the Mets and the way this bullpen situation has gone, that it's an issue. You need to add guys. And most of the ones that the Mets have been adding are guys that we're not too familiar with. I mean, Ty Adcock and, all these different guys that we're seeing, they're not household names. They're not guys that year in, year out are solid relievers that people are aware of. But Phil Maton is a guy that what I like the most, let me just get the good out of the way, is that, last year and the past few years being part of the Houston Astros, Phil Maton has been in a lot of playoff games, in big playoff games. He pitched in the World Series in 2021. He pitched in the Championship Series this past year in 2023, and he's been really good in the playoffs. So that's what matters to me, especially when you're moving from, in this case, Tampa Bay is where he pitched this season, now moving to New York. And, Tampa Bay, they've had a really disappointing season. They've been struggling. There are a few games under 500. So it hasn't been a great situation for them. We know the attendance is not great. So if you're Phil Maton, you're in a situation where there's not much pressure, not much stress. You're just kind of going in there and you're just doing your job. You're just pitching. But when you come into New York, there is a lot of pressure, especially with the Mets, especially with the bullpen. I mean, fans are all over Carlos Mendoza, including myself with some decisions, all over all the bullpen relievers, led by me. I'm all in on that. I'm with everybody. I mean, this bullpen has been a disaster, a nightmare, and something needs to change. So, Phil Maton, he's not the solution. He's not the guy that's just going to instantly fix everything. And now the Mets have a good bullpen and things like that. But he's a step in the right direction. It shows that the New York Mets are still trying to take action because, when you're still technically under 500, you're still out of the wild card race. You could ask the question of, okay, is this team actually competing or are they going to sell off? What are they going to do with a lot of their pieces? The way the Mets handled the offseason this past year of signing a lot of guys to one-year contracts, really makes you wonder, what is the future of the team? Are you really going to retain all these guys throughout the entirety of the season, or are you going to move on from some of these pieces to try to get some assets back, try to get the most value out of these players, especially guys who have been having pretty good seasons? So as of right now, the New York Mets are telling you that they still do intend to compete, that they still are trying to add to the team and not subtract. So I think that's a good sign so far. Now, they still have the month of July to kind of figure out how it goes. If they get on a winning streak, then yes, I feel like they're going to try to get some more. If all of a sudden things go really bad, then you might see some of those other guys be moved. But somebody like Phil Maton, when you're giving up cash considerations, it's a perfect situation. You're not parting with a major league ready piece. You're not parting with a minor league piece with some upside or just any player at all. Now, on the other side, Joey Lucchesi does get DFA'd, and he's a guy that some Met fans have been wanting to see, just kind of seeing what he could provide out of the bullpen, particularly, following the Brooks Raley injury, some of the inconsistencies with Danny Young and the struggles of Jake Diekman. A lot of Met fans are like, listen, here's a guy that you have in your farm system who's a starting pitcher who could give you multiple innings out of the bullpen. He's left-handed. He could throw a curve, so he's got some weird pitches. He's got a little bit of a funky delivery. Maybe he could provide something for you at the bullpen. But I feel like the Mets have just kind of shown, under David Stearns' watch, that they're just not high on the guy. They don't have much confidence in him. And, when it comes down to it, I have to trust David Stearns' eye for a pitcher more than my own. I don't claim to know more than him. I don't claim to be better than him. I give him so much credit for what he's done with Milwaukee, and especially with pitching specifically, finding talent that a lot of people may not know, and they turn out to be really solid pitchers. And Milwaukee is still a really good team following David Stearns' departure. So I'm going to give him a chance. I'm going to trust him and be like, okay, well, there's a reason why this guy has been in the minor leagues. And even despite all of the problems the Mets have had with pitching, there's a reason why they have not called this guy up. So, I'm going to give Stearns the benefit of the doubt when it comes to DFAing Joey Lucchesi. And, we'll see if a team claims him. They might not. We'll see how that whole situation goes. But one of the other things with Phil Maton is that his contract for this season is $6.25 million. So he's getting paid, not a crazy amount, but he's still getting paid something, and the New York Mets are going to take all of that salary on. Now, it's not the full salary because we're in the month of July, so you're paying the remaining of the season from that number. But the really interesting thing about Phil Maton is the fact that he has a club option for next year. That club option is $7.75 million, which still isn't all that much when it comes to bullpen. A lot of times guys could get, double-digit millions as far as money. It could be anywhere from like 10 to 12 million. So even a 7.75 is really not a bad number if you have a solid reliever. Now, the interesting thing about Phil Maton is that when you see, the Mets acquired this guy, let me look him up. Let me give him a Google search. And you pull up his numbers, you go, he's got a 4.58 ERA. This guy's no good. What are we doing? We're still getting these pitchers who aren't good enough and can't get the job done and belong in the minor leagues, and you can't use in high leverage spots. The encouraging thing is that recently Phil Maton has been much better. In his last 8.1 outings, that ERA is down to 1.08. So the New York Mets are kind of banking on that, and that the recent performance, his most recent performance, is closer to what you're going to get compared to the guy before that, who was really struggling. And again, you're going off of a guy who in the playoffs has been very good for Houston. Downside is that Houston's pitching, lab or pitching organization, coaches, and Tampa Bay's are significantly better than the Mets. So that is something that does worry me a little bit. It's like, okay, you did really good in Tampa, which just about everybody does. I've said it very loudly on our live show yesterday that the last time Jake Diekman was good is when he was in Tampa Bay, where everybody is good. So just because you're good in Tampa Bay, it doesn't always translate to the Mets, but you're just kind of hoping that they don't mess it up, they don't ruin it, and they could just kind of stick with what's been working for Phil Maton in Tampa Bay and also what gave him success in Houston. He's an interesting guy because the fact that he is 6'6", he's a bigger guy, but he doesn't necessarily throw hard. He's a guy that does rely more on movement, more on pitch break. He's got a sweeper, so it's a ball that it's going to be moving quite a bit. His walk rate is a little bit higher than you would like. He's walking more batters this year than he has in years past. And overall for the season, he's just been getting hit harder than he has before. So overall, it's been a down year for him. But like I said earlier, he is a guy that has had major league success and on the biggest stage in the World Series. And to me, that's what's most important, is that if the Mets actually did get a wild card and they were in the playoffs, you need to have guys you could turn to in a playoff game, because when you look at this roster, are you bringing Jake Diekman into a playoff game and Adam Ottavino into a playoff game and some of the other pitchers that we've seen on this team? Do you really feel comfortable with them in a playoff game? Probably not. So at least Phil Maton's been there and he's done that. And with this Mets bullpen, it's just so interesting because on the days where Daniel Nunez and Edwin Diaz are both rested and available and the Mets have a lead, there's a good chance they're going to win that game. But a lot of times those guys are pitching on the same day. So on the days when you don't have them available, that's where things go haywire. And we saw that in the last game against Pittsburgh when those guys weren't available. So you're looking at a rookie and you're looking at Adrian Hauser coming in, and that's all you got. And it's just not going to get the job done when you don't have confidence in Diekman or Ottavino to go to them in high leverage spots with runners on base. So it's very hard to win like that. It's very hard to manage like that. And when you have those situations where it's like, okay, we could win a couple of games when we have Diaz and Nunez available, but then when we don't have, we're going to lose a couple of games. That's how you get into these 4-game splits we've seen in the past 2 series for the Mets, and how you hang around 500 because you're not totally awful and you're not totally great. You're just kind of stuck somewhere in the middle. So if Phil Maton is able to help give them some sort of a bridge or just another arm that they could use to maybe where they don't have to use Nunez and Diaz on the same day every time, and you could kind of stagger them a little bit. This way you always have a really good pitcher for you at the end of games. That gives the Mets more of a chance to win more games than they lose and not be at 500. And the other good thing about this being a team option for next season for Phil Maton is, you get a trial run this year and just kind of see what happens. If it sticks and he is pitching really good again, like the way he did in Houston, like the way he has recently, great. Then you pick up the option, and at least you have a good reliever for next season. That's one less thing to worry about. You're still going to need more, but at least you have another reliever you could trust and count on. If he stinks this season, you don't pick up the team option and he's gone, but at least you tried. I mean, you have to get more arms, as many arms as possible, proven arms, guys that you know, and just see what happens. I hope that this is the first of multiple moves the Mets are going to make. We haven't seen a corresponding move for him to actually be on the active roster yet. I'm guessing the first one up is the rookie, Eric Orzi, and then we'll see what happens, because the Mets do have some other guys who are still working on their rehab assignments. Bryce Montes de Oca, he's a guy that does have really good stuff. He does tend to walk batters because of how much that ball moves, so it's a bit of a blessing and a curse. So we'll see what happens with him, and the same goes for Fujinami, a guy that throws 100 miles an hour. He's also rehabbing right now, trying to get healthy, also has a walk problem, but at least these guys do have upside. They have strikeout stuff, which most of the pitchers the Mets have brought up, they don't even have that. They just have the walk problem, and that's it, not even with the high upside stuff. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Let me know your thoughts on the Phil Maton acquisition, and until next one, be safe, be smart, and let's go Mets.